Hey, I've been generous with the 5 minutes. I'll just make sure I've got just before I've got Ed Siddle at the table. Thank you, Ed, for item number 11. But just to advise councillors of something that may be of interest to you, the government has in the last minute put out a statement regarding Ihumātao. I haven't read the direct press statement yet, but what the statement does is indicate that they are purchasing the land at Ihumātao off Fletcher Residential for something just over $29 million, and that this is as a result of the direct discussions between the Crown and the kingitanga representing the mana whenua. We have not been part of that negotiation. We were originally involved. It does not involve any financial commitment on the part of council, but clearly it is a step towards the resolution of that issue. And we are a party to a memorandum of understanding, and we have an observer status at the meetings that will take place, as is appropriate for Auckland Council, because this is part of our rohe as well. And I just want to acknowledge that there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, and that the appropriate way to resolve this was between the Crown and mana whenua, and that is what has happened. Phil, Jim, I think you have put a memo out, or about to put a memo out to all councillors, just outlining a little bit of the background to that. Is there anything that you want to add to my comments?
Oh, no, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think, as you've said, it's been a long process to get to this point, and one that the council's been very supportive of. We do have a continuing observer role, and obviously we'll carry out that role. But it's an excellent conclusion.
Thank you very much. That Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Worship. Just a point of clarification: have we formally resolved as a council to withdraw the SHA? Is that required, or does the work that is being undertaken by government at this point then supersede that?
I don't know the answer to that. If it's required, we'll do it, obviously, but we can come back to you on that.
I would formally like to request that we do have an opinion on that, because I would like to see it revoked, so that it's quite clear that we do not support special housing on that area. That's a fair point. It is absolutely, it's not even implicit, it's explicit in the government's decision that the effect of the state of the special housing area will no longer apply. That's why they've purchased the land. But I can find out what the legal formalities are for you via maybe Phil Wilson. Phil, you're here. I don't know whether you want to add to that, or whether you want to find out exactly. It's a matter of process rather than what the outcome will be. Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We'll clarify in detail following this, but I think it is important to record that the agreement doesn't prohibit some housing development in some form on that land. Okay, but I think it's best that we clarify outside of this forum with in consultation with government.
I would really appreciate that information, because there were obviously historical matters, but environmental assessments. There was a lot of work that was not undertaken by council before we embarked on an SHA, and I would really like to understand what the implications will be for moving forward.
I think, just to clarify Phil's point, as part of the discussions between Crown and mana whenua, the concept of papakainga housing has always been as part of those discussions. Councillor Filipaina.
Your Worship, I just wanted to make a clarification in regards to any of the reports and reports that actually went through this whole process. Was that mana whenua, and that was Te Akatai Waiuhua, and also Te Kawarawamaki presented to this council all the environmental issues, that wahi tapu, it was all presented to council. Just wanted to outline that, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Anyway, look, I think that it's appropriate that before Christmas that this matter has finally been resolved, and resolved, I think, in a positive way. And this is not a decision that adds a burden to the Auckland ratepayers. So I think we'll all be pleased about that one as well. Okay, we come to item number 11 on the agenda, and this is the Auckland War Memorial Museum Quarter 1 report. You should have received by email just a further, it's the email that I sent to the chair of the board of the Auckland Museum Trust, and that sets out where we're going from here. Through Councillor Filipina's work, we had a very useful and constructive rangatira meeting between the representatives that you put forward to be part of that with the trust board, and now it moves to the level of work between officials led on our side by our chief executive Jim Stabak, and on their side by the chief executive, the director David Gamester. So I think through that work we've actually made quite some significant progress at bringing the museum and the council closer together, as is appropriate for an institution that we put 30 million plus into each year. And that is also an acknowledgement that through its role as an iconic institution, that the museum has a leading role to play in terms of our cultural and heritage sector. But I think if I pass over to you, Ed, I also have with us, and maybe I don't know whether they want to come to the front table, Jignasha Patel, the Chief Financial Officer, and James Liddell, the External Relations Officer. Maybe you'd like to join Ed at the table, and welcome here. Ed, if I get you to lead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. Look, I have very little to add to what the Mayor just said. Look, it's really pleasing to get to this point of receiving Auckland Museum's first quarterly report, which was requested by the Finance and Performance Committee in June this year. It represents the first step in an accountability journey by the Museum with Auckland Council. There are no substantive matters in this first quarter report that I want to draw your attention to, but obviously in the same way you do when the CCOs come in for these report backs, you could direct questions on the report to Jignasha and James. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And James or Jignasha, would you like to comment on the quarterly report? We've got the document, so you don't need to go to it through it in detail, but if there's anything you want to highlight in it, you're most welcome to.
Sure. Thank you very much. One of the things I'm not going to comment directly on the report itself, other than the fact that we remain cautiously optimistic around it. And in the past 2 months since the September, we have seen increased visitation. And while we're down around about 60% on prior year, we are seeing month-on-month increase. And with the recent opening of the South Atrium, we are seeing good traction in December to date as well. So again, I want to thank you all for your support, both in attending our openings, but also in working closer with us, in enabling us to succeed. So thank you on that.
Thank you very much for that. And I think I joked at the opening of the Southern Atrium, we could have had a governing body meeting there because we had a quorum. So thank you all the councillors for that were able to attend that. I'm going to ask Alf Filipina to move this and second it by Desley Simpson, and to invite questions and comments together. I don't think there's anything hugely controversial in this, but to give people a chance if they'd like to ask a question and make a brief comment. So, Councillor Wayne Walker, you have the call.
Sure. Just following on from you, Mr Mayor, I was very pleased to be amongst the quorum at the opening of the South Atrium. Would that we could have had a meeting on the spot, because I'm sure it would have been great and there would have been a lot of participation. That's another story. If I look going forward, I would make a very strong suggestion that the design of the atrium and the associated cafe and the shop will make an incredibly positive lift in the financial sustainability of the museum. So in that respect, I'm just signalling that it's going to be highly desirable to pick up some reporting around that in respect of the KPIs and so on. And I am very mindful that in respect of the museum, as compared to some other institutions that are within the council family, we actually have very good line of sight in terms of cost and revenue and capital movements around the museum and KPIs and so on. So I just want to commend the museum around that. It's quite excellent. There's just one other thing I want to signal, Mr Mayor, and that just goes to the cultural review and frankly other reviews or strategies going forward, and that is the necessity where we have a taonga, which the museum is, which is effectively a national taonga. The collections and so on there merit funding from the government, frankly. And that is something that we need to look at in terms of our, if not this LTP, then certainly other matters of financial support going forward from the government. And by way of a question, would the museum be able to assist us in providing some information around that?
Most certainly, and we'd appreciate your support for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Al Filipina.
Thank you, Worship, and tēnā koutou to our presenters. Your Worship, the Rangatira to Rangatira meeting, just want to acknowledge yourself, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Simpson, who were there at the initial one. I think the interesting point is that we will have meetings when we need to have meetings with the Trust and the Chair. But in regards to the point that Councillor Walker just made around the government, that was already tabled by the Chair. That's exactly what the museum is doing. And we, at that meeting we had, was indicated our support for that. So that's already in motion, which is very good. Ed, I just want to acknowledge you in regards to our cultural institutions and the review, and also your ongoing support through the process that was outlined by His Worship the Mayor. And you know, to the museum, as always, it's around working together, and I want to end up, especially in the first half of next year, see the fruits to the conversations that you will have with the CEO and members of Auckland Council. So all the best for Christmas and the new year, and yeah, just thank you, and please pass it on to the Chair and the board, James, to walk it in. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much. This isn't a controversial topic, so I'm going to put the recommendations that we note this report. All those, sorry, it's been moved and seconded already by Councillor Filipina and Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. And if I can thank Jignacia and James and Ed for the work that they've all done together to bring the museum and the council closer, and to a big thank you to the museum for the fantastic work that you do. The atrium will make a big difference there, and it's an institution that we're proud of as a city, and that is reflected in the, the huge amount of financial support that we contribute through our ratepayers to the work that you do. Thank you very much for that. Right, we're now at item number 12, and I'd like to ask